Welcome to the Urban Complex, a system of interrelated, emotion-charged ideas, feelings, memories, and impulses. This name takes the definition and lays out what a listener should expect. A podcast where ideas, feelings, and memories collide, leading towards meaningful change. I'm co-host Chris Richardson. Please enjoy the journey with the Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow.
All opinions by Chris Richardson, Dominic Hoffman, and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arizona State University, the Arizona Department of Education, or the Arizona Commerce Authority. Any endorsement of or messages from sponsors or solely supporting the production of this podcast. There is no relationship further than podcast purposes with any sponsor unless separately created with another entity. Enjoy the Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow.
All right, Chris, another week. So what's top of mind for you this week?
Well, I was thinking it was just the Phoenix Suns' first game the other day. And I remember how big we were just so pumped. Sports were just humming here, and they had such a great run. But it's just got me thinking how crazy quick everything's moving. Like, oh my gosh, they're already playing again. Like, where's time going? So that was top of mind for me. How about you?
It is true. I mean, it seems like it was just yesterday that they were unfortunately losing the finals, but I don't know if the quick turnaround is a good thing or a bad thing, because that means usually we're used to being out a lot earlier.
Yeah, good point.
And the off season seems longer. But no, you're right. I mean, this is the exciting part of the year where we've got football, we've got basketball, baseballs, in the playoffs. It's just, it's a great time of year, especially for us sports fans. So who's our guest this week? I have a feeling you might know her.
Yeah, so it's Superintendent Kathy Hoffman with the Arizona Department of Education. And as you all know, listening, she's technically my boss right now as I'm working there. But I think I just am excited. She's got a great vision. She's very down to earth and practical, and she brings people in. And I think the message here definitely fits a smart city audience. Like, you can't have you need an educated population to have a great smart city. So that's a little bit about her. We didn't meet until about week one, but I think people are going to find the story great.
Yeah, this is going to be very exciting. I mean, I've been watching from the outside in of all the great things the department has been doing since the pandemic. So really excited to hear her story and meet her as a person. She's been a great leader for the state of Arizona. So should we bring her in?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Support for this episode of The Urban Complex comes from Worldwide Technology.
What if we could connect people to new possibilities, turn thinking into a way forward, solve problems before they become a problem, and share the future with everyone? We can. At WWT, we connect businesses to technology to make the impossible possible, to reach better decisions faster, to accelerate progress. Together, let's make a new world happen.
All right. Superintendent Hoffman, please let Dom and I give you a warm welcome to the podcast, The Urban Complex. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We've found in doing these that the best way to build affinity between our guests and our audience is just to start with background about you. We'll talk about kind of who you were before the superintendent. We'll get to that and the Department of Education shortly. But just bring us to speed. Kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Going way back, I had kind of an interesting educational background that when I was growing up, I attended a Japanese immersion program. So I had half the day in Japanese and half the day in English. And so I speak Japanese fluently. And I think that having that background has always given me a unique perspective of education. And I've always loved school. I think having had that experience and kind of helped me to have a more world view and really celebrate all the different diversity within our schools as well. But anyway, so having that background growing up was a bit unique, and I even majored in Japanese when I was in college. Many people don't realize I didn't know right away that I wanted to be an educator or in education. But I started my career as a preschool teacher, then discovered the field of speech language pathology. So I got my master's at U of A, worked in our public schools in special education, first down in Tucson, then up in Phoenix, before deciding to run for office so that I could advocate on behalf of our students and educators at the state level. And I was elected in 2018. At that time, I'm very proud that I was the youngest woman elected to state office in the country. I like to break the mold and break that glass ceiling. And so I've been working as the superintendent of public instruction for Arizona since January of 2019.
What an amazing story. So tell us about that. Tell us about what it's like to be the superintendent of public instruction and what it's like, what Arizona Department of Education is. Assume that no one knows, but that'd be great.
So the Department of Education is responsible for implementing programs for all of our public schools. We have both district and charter schools in Arizona. There are over 600 professionals that work in the department across 4 offices in the state. We administer a wide range of programs, everything from federal grant programs to school safety to educator recruitment and retention, early education. There's a wide range of programs. I couldn't possibly name them all. But in my role, in addition to this administrative side of being superintendent, I really value the importance of being the chief advocate for our public education system and making sure that we're celebrating our students and our teachers and elevating the education profession, and just making sure that I'm an advocate. I'm also, I would say, a professional collaborator or convener. I'm constantly bringing people to the table together to work on solutions. Since in my role, I don't create the policies, like the legislature or the State Board of Education would be creating the policies that then the department implements. So that's an important thing to distinguish. But I do think it's very important to be the chief advocate on behalf of our schools.
That's awesome. I love that idea of a professional collaborator. In our previous guests and in the stories we've heard about smart cities, it's always coming back to this idea of collaboration is such a necessity. So I love that professional collaborator title. I really do.
And the convening side, creating the space to do it. We'll have to kind of get your philosophy in some of the later questions. That'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. So superintendent, this is one of our most fun questions that Chris and I get to ask because we realize that in smart cities, there's no true definition. And so it's been fun hearing how our guests perceive or approach smart cities from their own perspective. And I don't believe we've had someone with an education background before. And so please talk to us about, your view of smart cities. What's your approach and how do you bring that mindset into your daily work?
I do think it ties right into that idea of collaboration and convening. I think a smart city is a place where things are not operating in silos. And I think that tends to be what people are really comfortable with, is working in silos, working with their teams, working with their own community. But where I think we have the most opportunity for smart cities is around more around crossing and breaking out of those silos to collaborate. And so as I was thinking about this, one thing that came to mind for our public schools and education system is that, well, first of all, that connection and there's just such a strong tie between what's happening in our schools and what's happening in the home. We know that where we have really strong schools, the property values go up because of that strong connection. Where you have high achieving schools is where people want to live. Also thinking about that connection between workforce development and our schools. There's such a strong tie between the health of the economics of a community and the economy, and thinking about, well, how are our schools preparing the next generation for those careers, and what are the opportunities that will be available to them. So making sure, again, strong schools means that we'll have the future workforce be really strong, meaning a strong economy. So there's just so many different connections there. But to me, it all starts in our schools. It starts in our classrooms. that's where I think it's really important to be making the investment, because to me, it's an investment in the future as well.
Yeah, I think you just hit on something, Chris. I absolutely love this idea of strong schools lead to strong communities and strong cities.
sure.
I mean, that's terrific. And this idea of breaking down silos. I mean, it's interesting, especially for K-12. You have students at schools that live in various cities. I mean, they could be, school districts cross municipal boundaries quite often. So I absolutely love that idea of, let's break down silos and build up partnerships as an approach for smart cities. That's great, Superintendent. So, the pandemic must have been extremely challenging, especially for K-12 schools. Can you share some of your observations? What was working and what wasn't working at the time?
Yeah, so I mean, 100% was extremely challenging when the pandemic hit Arizona, as well as the rest of the world, of course. But what I saw as some of our biggest challenges from the education lens was first the digital divide. And I know that this was an issue across the country, but in my conversations with other state leaders, I think Arizona was even further behind when the pandemic hit in terms of students' access to technology and to internet. Based on the data we have, it was at least 200,000 students in Arizona, which is almost a fifth of our student population that didn't have adequate connection to the internet. And so that was a major disruption to learning. And I know on the bright side of that, it's become one of our top priorities, and a lot of progress has been made since the spring of 2020. But that was a huge impact in terms of students' opportunity to access their learning. It was the most severe in the rural or more remote parts of the state, where there's even less access to internet. However, even in our urban areas like Phoenix and Tucson, where you would think that more people would have access to internet, we still found that families did not, oftentimes because they couldn't afford the internet plan that was available to them. So thankfully we were able to, again, work collaboratively and really put a lot of great people working on this together to help address some of these issues. But that was, for me, that was probably had the most significant impact to learning, was the digital divide.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And you Superintendent, you talked about the influence of the Japanese immersion program in your career and how you were kind of brought up. Talk to us about what do you see the result of the pandemic in this group of K-12 students, especially in education. Is there anything you want to highlight to remedy or kind of accelerate the positive changes? It's got to be a very big experience in this group of students.
Yeah, I do think that this will really accelerate our students' access to technology, and whether it's their connectivity at home or both the students and their parents and families' ability to use the technology effectively. So I do think that those will be positive changes to thinking about what the future career needs of these students will be. I'm just sure there'll be, just as there is today, a lot of technological skills needed to be successful professionally in the future as well. I think our students, one kind of a fun way to look at this, something I've been reflecting on is actually a lot of our students were already also ahead of our teachers in terms of their technological skills. So we're also bridging the divide between the students or the children's technological skills and their teachers. Teachers really had to do a lot of training, professional development over the past year and a half to be able to teach in an online environment or even a hybrid environment. And so I think, although that was not fun for our teachers to have in terms of it being like an emergency demand for them to have to learn so quickly, to adapt and to learn all these skills. I wish it had been under different circumstances, not a pandemic, but now looking at where we're at today, our teachers have learned a lot. Our schools are prioritizing their funding different. I've heard many school leaders say that now they're one-to-one in terms of, computer to student, one-to-one devices. So I do think we've made a lot of progress.
That's really kind of an interesting perspective I hadn't thought about is the teacher cohort evolving rapidly, both in response, but also probably the students pushing them too. That's really interesting. So still on the pandemic side, tell us, you commissioned a tech task force, and in response, you saw that there were gaps, and you brought some folks in. Tell us who that was, what they found, kind of how you worked with them. I think that's a really, really great story for our audience to hear.
Yeah, so as I was saying, as far as convening people to work on some of our biggest challenges and to make sure we really have the experts at the table, back in the summer of 2020, right after the pandemic hit, recognizing that the department needed to pivot to really be a leader in the space of addressing the digital divide, I launched a technology task force. This group included educators, we had IT directors from schools, technology experts from the field, from various tech companies. We had some representation from philanthropy and policy experts. Of course, we had some students as well. And this group met regularly over about a year period to make recommendations to the department. And during that process, a lot of the tech task force work was studying what other states had done, because as I said before, it really became apparent that Arizona was behind and that we had a lot to learn from what other states had been doing over the past couple years. So we brought in guest speakers from other states to talk about their journey, to learn from them, to ask questions. We together as the tech task force, we learned a lot and came to some agreements about what the department, they made recommendations to the department about what we could do differently. So one of their main recommendations that came out of this was to create a new program area in the department, which is the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning. So we're currently in the process of getting this up and running, and of course Chris plays an integral role in getting that going. But I'm very grateful to the collaboration of the tech task force to get us to this point.
Well, yes, let's talk about that. It's exciting. Obviously I do know a thing or two about it, but I want to hear it from you. I think, and I think your vision there of helping create the space, convening the right groups to get to where this outcome is laid out. Like, what is the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning, and what do you think it'll do for Department of Education and K-12 in Arizona? It'd be great to hear.
Yeah, so even before the pandemic, when I was visiting schools across the state, which to me was a very important part of my job, is visiting schools, seeing firsthand what their successes are, what their challenges are. And even before 2020, it became very clear to me that there were major discrepancies in terms of what was available for students in terms of device, and I'm talking about in the schools, not even in their homes, just in the schools, what types of devices they had access to, what types of courses or teachers they had access to. So for example, some schools had really outstanding coding programs and robotics. Others had like a specialized STEM class. I've seen, there was just such a wide range, whereas some schools had really antiquated computer labs that looked like, they hadn't been able to upgrade their technology in at least a decade. So seeing those gaps and thinking about what skills our students were going to need to be successful in the future was already a concern for me, kind of already on my radar. So then when the pandemic hit and we got to this point of launching the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning, my vision for it is that the office will be a service to our schools, that because we do want to be a support, not coming in and just telling them what they need to do, but that we can help them to better assess where they're at and what their next steps might be, and also to help them, especially our smaller rural school communities that don't have a lot of resources and don't have a lot of IT staff to lean on, or tech experts that they can go to. I want them to feel like they can come to the department to consult and to get advice, to get guidance, and potentially help them to save money, access grants, potentially create more consortia, these types of strategies to support our schools, because we know that people who have the tech expertise typically can make a lot more money working in industry than working for a school. And our schools tend to just have very limited resources when it comes to being able to really pay for high quality tech expertise. So I would love if the department could help be a support in that way.
Oh, that's just incredible. That entire story, Superintendent, your leadership is fantastic, and we're so lucky to have you here. I mean, the entire story, from convening the task force to receiving the recommendations to not sitting on it, but actually immediately spinning up the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning and getting it going. I mean, it's going to be an example that I think lots of people around the country can really learn from. And you did mention in that process that you also learned from others outside of Arizona to see what were the best practices. Is there anything you want to highlight that's kind of inspired you from outside of Arizona that you've maybe really looked to as a best practice?
One of the models we have looked to is what they've been doing in Utah. And I love that it's a neighboring state, because it's very easy for Arizonans to relate to Utah models. But they started about 5 years ago and created and they also went through a process to really assess where they were at and what their priorities should be. But they were able to also gain the support of their state legislature, which I think is really key. That's something we're still working towards. Is at this time we're only using federal funds for the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning, but in the future we will be calling on the legislature to support this work. So in Utah, they were able to, I think, make the argument that these technological skills and what's happening in our schools is critical for future workforce development and economic opportunity. And so they created a grant program for their schools to access funds. So so schools would submit proposals on what their technological needs are, and they can get approved for additional funds to build out their programs. So that's just one model that we've looked at. And at this time, we're not creating a grant program in that way, but I do think that because Utah implemented that about 5 years ago, when the pandemic hit, they were just light years ahead of us in terms of preparedness to shift to virtual learning, like it was no big deal almost, because they already had the devices and the skills, and they'd already been putting so much time and effort into making that a priority over the past 5 years.
And it sounds like that pool of funds could then be redeployed to where the new opportunity was easy, and they didn't have to go back to the state because it was already there. That's a great point. What one of the questions we ask is, if you were to get some help, whether it's us in our network or people that are listening, or maybe the vendor community, like what is a challenge that's facing you in the department that we could maybe help amplify or augment, or find someone to help frame what the challenge is and what success might look like?
I have two main thoughts of where I think we could really use some help and support right now. One is, as we're building our Office of Digital Teaching and Learning, we're building a new team. We're currently hiring. First and foremost, an immediate need is we're hiring. If you know of anyone and that would be interested in serving in the Department of Education and helping to build out this team and making it successful, please send them our way. So that's the first one. It's kind of a selfish need for the department.
Quite a few
we really
roles
want this
too.
to be a success.
Just to let you know, Superintendent Hoffman is really invested in this program. There's some leadership internally at the Department of Education, but also there's like five additional roles coming up within the office. So yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely want to make a pitch for that. But then similarly, like I was saying, our schools have new needs in terms of also the positions for our schools. So for, like I was saying, in some schools I see that they have a coding class or robotics or STEM, and we need more people who are pursuing those types of teaching pathways, who want to work in our schools. Or, I mean, even on the more administrative side, we need IT directors, we need people who can help with the cybersecurity. So I also want to bring to people's awareness that our schools are also increasing, there's an increasing demand for people to work in these types of roles. And so anything anyone can do to help to strengthen those pathways or encourage people to look into those types of opportunities. Because we have over 200 districts and over 500 charter schools in Arizona, there's quite a demand if you think about all the different systems that need these types of professionals working in our schools.
Great point. Just taking some quick notes here. And our final question, as you've learned about the podcast Urban Complex and kind of been a guest here, is there anyone? We've found that we can't do it alone. Obviously, we need great guests. We've had a lot of help in our own careers. Is there anyone that you want to call out that's helped you along your way? And if so, let us know if they're a good fit. Maybe we'll get them on the show. We'd love if there's someone that also you think we should be trying to get on the Urban Complex.
One person that came to mind was Superintendent of Phoenix Union School District, Chad Gustin. He is also just extremely innovative and very, they've been really role models in building out schools that have some career focused types of models. So like they have a coding school, and they're actually in the process of creating a teachers academy type school for their high school students as well. So he's doing some really cool, innovative things. And then also during the pandemic, he stepped up as far as I know, without anyone asking him to also help to coordinate vaccination for teachers in Maricopa County, and right when the vaccines were available. So he's also just a connector, serving the community, and I think he'd be someone also very interesting to hear from on this podcast. That's
great. We'll have to do that. I do want to make sure we see it. Not everyone follows the podcast on YouTube. Do you mind sharing what what your mission statement is for the Department of Education? We see it on your sure, yeah. Background.
Yes, the vision statement for the Department of Ed is equity for all students to achieve their full potential.
Well, you can clearly see there's a great vision here. With that, it's a wrap. We thank the Superintendent Kathy Hoffman of Arizona Public Schools, Department of Education. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Right.
Support for this episode of the Urban Complex comes from MST.
MST is a Salesforce certified integrator. We work on building customer experience solutions and deploy them for our customers. As we started evolving, our why also continued to evolve as a company. Over the last 3 years, the whole approach was really revolving around what we call 3 C's, which is customers, colleagues, and community.
All right, Dom, so that was Superintendent Hoffman. What do you think?
Yeah, the superintendent was great. I mean, what a great leader and what a great story. I think it's a great example and a great story to highlight for our audience, because I mean, first things first, when we started talking about smart cities and identifying the, key organizational structures, key roles that make these programs or initiatives successful, one of the things was the leader and who's running the organization. And I just love that her approach as the chief advocate, understanding that that's a major role that she plays in the professional collaborator. I mean, that's exactly what a lot of the smart city leaders are. I mean, they have to be the chief advocates. They have to be this professional collaborator, or they'll never be able to get anything done, because they're usually the ones out there really banging the bell and beating the drum, saying, this is what we need. We need people to come around the table. We need to collaborate. And so I just thought that as a leadership perspective, I mean, what a great story for her.
So she's out there championing an initiative, but she's also building the team. I mean, she took the opportunity to remind folks that we're hiring, and I thought that was great. And then she's also convening the groups to get excited about it. I mean, I didn't want to step on any toes there, but she's actually invited me as a relatively new. I mean, I mentioned in her intro, I met her week 1. That was only 3 months ago, and she's already trusted me to go on we call it the road show. She's had me talk about the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning with every superintendent of every county across the state. And we're getting them excited. And the response by them, they just love that she's been present and out there and building the space to get involved. And I think it just goes full circle. You champion something, you're there, you're approachable, and you listen, and then you make it happen. And she's doing that. It's great.
But it goes back to the basis of smart cities, like meet the people where the people are at. She's not building these programs and staying in downtown. She's going out and meeting these superintendents. She's meeting the district. She's not just doing this from the Capitol.
Just email it to someone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is they're going to act? No.
No. So that's great leadership, I think, and that's how smart cities need to be done. Being out there with the people, getting your programs, and hearing directly from them on their level. I think that's just another great leadership aspect of it. What about you?
Yeah, I'm the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning is very near and dear to my heart, and I mean, it has the opportunity to really be one of those rising tides lifts all ships. She mentioned there's 200 school districts, there's 500 charter schools. She means it. Like our vision is that every one of the schools within all of those local education agencies get some measure of benefit from this service we're creating. And whether it's free resources, she mentioned the teachers are sometimes behind. Like maybe we create resources for the teachers to use the tech that's in the classroom, students to use it, even the parents to support it when they're at home. It's how do you build a more consistent experience for what's being done in the school and at home? I mean, those things can all be done, and they're in a great position to engage and understand and listen and produce. So it's to that too, things like helping the work you're doing, like digital inclusion, and get, she 200,000 school-aged children didn't have broadband during the pandemic. But what are they doing? Are they watching their lessons plan on their parents' phone if they have a smartphone? I don't know. I can't imagine that would be an engaging way to learn. So we've got some work to do, and she's happy to sponsor the work. She's happy to engage. She's happy. I mean, she even set the stage with Utah. If we can go and get in front of the legislature and get a pool of funds that can incentivize the right behavior and get scale at a cost-effective manner, I mean, Arizona's going to come out of this looking great. We learned the lesson. We always say, the best time to plant the tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. She's planting that tree now, and in a way that's going to catch and grow the roots and flourish.
Yeah, and I think there's there's so much good things to highlight in that story. I mentioned it when we were speaking with her, but this idea that we need to understand what's going on. Let's stand up this task force. Let's have them provide recommendations, but then let's act on those recommendations. Too many times, especially with smart cities, we'll spin up a task force, they'll make recommendations, and then no one acts on it. And then you just lose the trust of the community and the people that you brought together by spinning up the task force, bringing together experts from all different sorts of industries and sectors, but then actually acting on those recommendations. You immediately get buy-in from those individuals and those leaders that you've brought together, because you're showing that, hey, I'm actually going to implement the things that you told us were needed or were necessary.
And she means it. I mean, she's letting myself and our deputy associate superintendent, Karina Jones, she's letting us engage the vendor community. So if you're listening and you want to work in a way at scale and get technology out to K-12 and not do it at every individual decision maker, but do it statewide, like seriously, we're already discussing with major cloud players, with major service providers. ADE, Department of Education, may not be the one that builds the service and delivers the service. In fact, we probably won't want to do that, but we're getting groups that are creating entities to do so, and they need your help. And so this is great. I mean, it's already moving, and you can see why. I mean, she's got a great story to tell.
Yeah, maybe before Cracks and Pavement, she gave us our new tagline: investing in stronger schools, building smarter communities for a stronger tomorrow. We just added a new.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, because it does start with education.
Totally.
I was excited for this one. Cool.
Yeah. So, Cracks in the Pavement. What article do you have for us this week?
So, I am notoriously bad. I do jaywalk. So, disclaimer: I'll probably get a ticket for someone listening. But here's the headline: Jaywalking reform efforts see mixed results across states and cities. We know here in Phoenix, we've got a high pedestrian fatality metric, and I'm sure part of it is tied to jaywalking. What it's saying here is that there's advocates for safe and equitable walking infrastructure share their experiences. So they highlighted a few states, and they're talking about how they reduce inequities to improve the experience. For me, like why it drives me nuts is if I have to walk, a massive block to get to the next light before I can cross, that's what it is. It's about time. But if it were super simple and easy and quick and you didn't have to wait when there's no cars there, I'd be all over it. But anything, as you're looking at this, they're trying to eliminate tickets. They're trying to create a simple way to provide penalties for jaywalking when it's in dangerous zones. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a tough issue. We faced something like this when I was working for the city. It's because oftentimes the people that get caught are usually, lower income, maybe people experiencing homelessness. And so it's a very difficult political issue for a lot of cities, but it's a major issue because people are dying. And so you have to really try to think creatively of how to solve this. And what cities they tend to lean back on what we're used to is penalties, right? And fines. And even as I think I saw in the article, sometimes jail time. And so, there's got to be maybe smarter ways to do it, but it's just such a difficult issue. This is
okay. I don't jaywalk.
Yeah,
I don't jaywalk.
Yeah.
I was reading it, and another thing that I thought was really interesting is some people don't believe jaywalking's a thing. They think that the auto industry advocates made it up to try to get the shift of the blame away to the pedestrians when a car does hit someone. So that was really interesting to me, that people don't think that that it's actually an issue. But yeah, it's interesting. Do you know anything that's going on with Phoenix with in regard to jaywalking or pedestrian fatality?
No, I know they have a task force that's working alongside ASU to look at how to mitigate pedestrian fatalities, as we do have such a high rate of them here in Phoenix, in the greater Phoenix, and even in the entire state, because our roads are so wide. I think it's just going to be an interesting issue to watch, especially as more and more cities try to re-urbanize and build more walkable communities.
Right.
It just naturally leads to
that
some of these issues.
Takes away from the problem entirely. I like that comment.
If you close,
you get these blocks that are closed, people can get to where they need to go. And some of our guests are probably thinking about this. I see Philadelphia highlighted. I see Los Angeles highlighted, right? And we've had those departments of transportation. We had Emily on here. And what's interesting is, guests like Brandon from Peachtree Corners and all the testing and technologies they're doing. I'm sure a lot of that's also looking at how can we either prevent or protect pedestrians, as they're entering and exiting our roadways. So again, reasons why these labs, these living labs, these innovation sandboxes could be so critical, because if there's an issue that comes up out of the blue, like pedestrian fatalities, maybe you can leverage that platform to try to solve those issues. So totally. Yeah. All right. Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. That's a wrap. Until next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow. Please find us on where you listen: Apple Podcasts, Spotify or YouTube. We do love your feedback. Let us know if you have ideas for guests or questions to air on Cracks in the Pavement via social media. The Urban Complex is found on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Or just shoot me an email, chris@theurbancomplex.com. Until next time.